All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kate Hartaleza, your moderator, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all to Relevant Actionable Threat Intelligence, presented to you by NetTrust and RiskIQ. And for today's topic, we will be focusing on delivering actionable outcomes through attack surface insights, threat fingerprinting, and real-world machine learning. All right, so I can see a few more attendees coming in the room. And while everybody is settling down, setting up their audio and whatnot, please allow me to go over some housekeeping rules. All right, so all participants are muted throughout the webinar to enable the speakers to present without interruption. And anytime, should you have any questions during their presentations, you may submit via the Q&A box located at the right panel of your GoToWebinar screen. So this session is being recorded and will be sent to registered attendees afterwards, along with the presentation slides. So today's on-demand webinar video will also be uploaded on the NetTrust YouTube channel, so you can watch it at your own pace. And now for today's agenda, we will walk you through the topic, the exploration of current vulnerability and threat landscape, and the challenges faced. Also, we will be introducing you to a high-level overview on RiskIQ Eliminate platform, while sharing some relevant use cases and solutions. Lastly, we will also do a live demo on the platform itself, RiskIQ Internet Intelligence Platform. All right, so we are encouraging everybody to actively participate and stay tuned until the end of today's sessions. And later on, we will be launching a poll after the presentation. So the first 10 attendees who will answer the poll questions will each receive a $5 voucher from GrabFood. So take note of that, the $5 GrabFood voucher. All right, so the question, by the way, includes that if you're interested in a 30-day free trial on RiskIQ Eliminate, but yeah, we'll get to that later. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our panel of speakers. So joining us today, leading and contributing in the discussion is Larry Lee. So Larry is a product specialist at NetTrust, focusing on infrastructure security solutions. After graduating with a degree in digital cybersecurity, he started his career in digital cyber security. During the early stage, he was mainly involved around project management and deployment of cybersecurity products and solutions. And in 2018, he was promoted to the product specialist role, where he continues to provide professional advice to clients that will best reinforce their security posture in an organization. And of course, our main presenter for today is Hans Barr. So Hans is a technical director and solutions consultant at RiskIQ APAC, where he focuses on digital threat management. So in his 17-year career, he has spent most of it with the U.S. Department of Defense, serving Air Force, Army, and Navy clients. And most of these engagements surrounded cybersecurity, cyber warfare, information security, and systems engineering. And Hans also continued his career in Asia to pursue cybersecurity consulting. He currently serves high-tech manufacturing, telco, and financial services clients across Asia. Hans has provided engineering and consulting services throughout the US, Germany, UK, Singapore, South Korea, China, and Taiwan. So Hans again will be our main speaker for today. And now, without much further ado, we will turn the time over first to Larry as he will introduce NetTrust. All right, so and then he will hand over the main presentation to Hans. Gentlemen, over to you, please.
Thank you, Kate. So, hi, good morning, everyone. So, first of all, thank you for your time for taking your time to attend this webinar. My name is Larry. I'm the product specialist from NetTrust in charge of RiskIQ. Just to give a brief introduction on NetTrust, as a company, we provide comprehensive cybersecurity solutions to our customers from various fields, from the crypto identity security, infra security, application security, and we also do provide professional consultancy and assessment services for customers. We are the Asia's first public certificate authority, and we are also Singapore's only accredited CA that provides respective individuals, businesses, and government organizations with a complete online identification and security infrastructure to enable customers to secure electronic transactions. In a nutshell, NetTrust has 5 main towers providing the respective security solutions. crypto identity security, providing certificate authority services, and PKI solutions and digital signatures. Infrastructure security, which deals with the traditional infrastructure security such as email, web, data loss prevention, and endpoint detection and response, and the traditional endpoint security solutions. Application security, which deals with static application security testing and security testing for applications. Cyber vigilance, which we provide IT security, auditing services, penetration testing, and vulnerability assessments. We also have a training and support and maintenance cover, which we have a frontline customer service team and technical support team to support our solutions for customers. This is our base outline of our customer reference. As you can see, NetTrust has customers in the Singapore government, the local banks, a majority of the Institute of Higher Learnings, the respective 3 major Singapore telcos, and the shipping industry. So our role with RiskIQ is that NetTrust is the exclusive distributor of RiskIQ, which we cover the APAC region. So we include countries such as China, Taiwan, Indonesia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. With this long established relationship, NetTrust is highly competent in RiskIQ products, and we provide dynamic in-house technical support team as well as the strong fundamentals and partner base we own. So we are able to provide swift local support to customers that include services like project management, installation, training, and troubleshooting. Without further ado, I'll pass the mic over to Hans so that he will continue on to present on the RiskIQ products. Hans, over to you.
Thank you, Larry. Much appreciated. And again, I want to echo thanks everyone for connecting today's session. I'm hoping to deliver a good bit of information to everyone so that they can have a better understanding of RiskIQ, the products that we offer, what we do, big picture, and then of course with the Illuminate demonstration, a better understanding of that product set by itself. So as I was introduced, my name is Hans Barre, the Technical Director for the Asia Pacific region. And, you know, I'll be going through all the material that way we can just have a better understanding of what RiskIQ does and the overall big picture. First, I'm going to start off with just an understanding sort of the vulnerability landscape. And for all of the cyber practitioners who are in the room here, you know, this is not going to be anything new to you, right? So as each vulnerability is surfaced and exploited, with it comes a huge wave of energy, right? So, you know, there's reporting about the vulnerability. There is information about who was breached, or speculation about who was breached. How did it happen? When did it happen? And then all of the security products that are employed to assist. Then of course those are leveraged within the internal teams. But over recent weeks, it seems like the volume has been going up, right? You know, we talk about RDP vulnerabilities, Zoho, you know, exploits as it relates to certain 0 days, and sort of proving out if these vulnerabilities are exploitable via POCs. You know, case after case, essentially, it seems like the volume has just gone up tremendously. And from our perspective, RiskIQ, of course, we're paying attention just like every other security product is, because we're trying to understand what's going on. First of all, is it dissect or intersect with an area that we are able to assist our clients with? And then how do we get ahead of this, right? How do we learn from these experiences to make sure that either it doesn't happen again to either to our clients, or we can learn enough about it to try to fend off the next wave of attacks that would come about. But of course, at the root of all this, you know, are the vulnerabilities that exist in a lot of technologies that are out there, whether it's known vendors, big organizations that are pretty much in every enterprise on the globe, or smaller vendors that are just delivering certain services in a very niche area. But nonetheless, you know, we're all paying attention, whether it's SolarWinds or the Microsoft Exchange or, you know, some of the others that we've put out here. The volume seems to be increasing exponentially, right? Then when we look at the actual threat landscape itself, you know, the traditional attacker was, you know, what somewhat would envision as a low level, you know, someone who is maybe doing coding and on the side. They're coming up with their own ways of exploiting, or maybe they're just trying to testing out, are they able to do this particular thing? And now we've advanced, here we are 2021, where that's no longer the attacker anymore. Now it's attacker groups, and they're doing this as a business. So just like you and I would have a business that we are maintaining, you know, profit, loss, you know, so on and so forth, the ways that we're going to market, the attackers are essentially doing the same thing. So to viewing it from that perspective is critical, because how does a business operate, right? You know, what are the personnel that are involved? What are the approaches that are used? And then it isn't until that moment that you're really able to truly get into the mindset of the attackers and the attacker groups, to be able to understand how do we at a psychological level truly understand the motivation, and understand their business model, their business structure, to be able to defend against an attack from that business, right? Whether that business is an APT 33, 41, or whatever the APT group is that's attacking, or maybe even they're not even named, right? When you look at nation state attacks that happen, whether the attack is coming from the east or the west, you know, whoever the attacker group is, they don't always have names. And so security organizations are, you know, always defining that threat landscape, you know, a bit clearer. With each new attack that's coming about, all the TTPs that are leveraged, people are trying to put a box around them to say, okay, well, they weren't named previously, but based on the behavior, based on, you know, it looks like they were doing this kind of an attack, they were using these tools to do this, they were targeting this organization, here's how they did it. Maybe we don't know why they did it just yet, but the landscape is rapidly expanding as well. So a lot of the named organizations, the named APT groups, we have a good understanding of who they are and where they operate. But what we're seeing as of late are sort of the unnamed, right? And sort of these sleeper cells almost of organized, you know, crime that are wreaking havoc on organizations all over the world. So, you know, the third-party attack, the third-party chain attack is probably one of the most obvious, right? So for those who are paying attention to sort of the Ssl hack, and of course SolarWinds would be a part of that. We know that the supply chain has always been vulnerable and a target for the named and unnamed attackers, because they know that if an organization has their own perimeter maintained and under control, then what about their third parties, right? What about those organizations who are providing a service to the primary company, but maybe their security isn't what it should be, right? So we know that's always been a risk, but it wasn't until recently, the recent months, that has come into view as a major area of focus, right? And Hafnium is really, you know, one of the things that put that on the map a bit more, in addition to SolarWinds. So what does that tell us, right? You know, it tells us that the threat landscape is really dynamic. It's changing. You know, it's morphing. The vulnerabilities are still being exploited, right? Patching, the basic hygiene stuff is really important, but people always get caught maybe by not performing basic hygiene still, or deferring risk to a later day, which, you know, then overnight, as these exploits become available, then those vulnerabilities become higher priority. But if you're not paying attention, then you will be caught up in this right away. 0 days, 1 days, these are always the sneaky little things that creep up and get us. We learned that with Microsoft and the Exchange server vulnerabilities and subsequent breaches that happened after that. But no doubt that the attacks are becoming more and more, right? They're becoming more prevalent. So when we define attack surfaces, then we're able to kind of get a better understanding of what these attacks mean to us. Traditionally, attack surfaces were defined as what is within your perimeter, right? What's behind your firewall. But now the attack surfaces are growing. Through the examples that I was showing briefly, a lot of that is not happening internal to an environment. It's happening external. So as we become less centralized, then that attack surface has morphed essentially, right? So that's one thing that we've learned from this is the attack surface is no longer within just the organization's firewall or within their perimeter, but it's more and more happening from third parties and external. What's going on outside in the wild, and something that maybe you don't have control over, but do you have visibility into nonetheless? And this is where different threat intelligence comes into play to be able to augment that visibility, to be able to pay attention to the expanded attack surface and what's really happening outside as it's changing dynamically, and all the vulnerabilities that are related to that changing landscape. So that would be some takeaways from just that, what we've learned about the recent threat landscape, right? The attacker groups, the named attacker groups, the unnamed, the new ones that we're seeing come into play, and sort of where their focus is and will be going forward. But then real life challenges come into play, right? It's great to play in theory land, but what's really plaguing sort of organizations internally, digital cloud centric transformation, with the ability to stand up new infrastructure pretty much at any given moment, then also how do you as a security team really have an awareness of what that is, on a consistent basis, and how do you defend against it, right? Because from an attacker's view, they view that piece of the attack surface, the cloud environment, as a playground, right? It's something that they can test the limits. Did the security team do their due diligence to protect that Amazon S3 bucket? Did they lock down the servers that are cloud hosted? Did they do what they were supposed to do to better secure the environment outside of their perimeter? And if the answer is no to some of those, then of course that leads to a little bit of pain for the security team and the organization. But of course, it's a challenge that I help my clients with on a regular basis, because there's sanctioned transformation and then there's unsanctioned digital transformation. Again, the ability for anybody to establish an environment, in a cloud situation is both a pro and a con here, right? But getting visibility is key. Prioritize and finding what really matters, right? It's a constant challenge for organizations to be able to build out, a full landscape of what is truly owned by the organization, right? And really dig into mapping, indexing everything that is truly a part of the organization and the attack surface as it's defined. So again, looking at what really matters, right? How do you prioritize that? And a lot of organizations still, you're operating on with like spreadsheets of what you think you own, websites, maybe cloud stuff that's out there. But it's still kind of a mystery, right? Do we really own 1,000 websites, or do we own 2,000 that we're just not aware of? And if so, then how do we prioritize those, and how do we start to protect that? So just getting insight into that has always been a challenge. Taking precise action and that which leads to meaningful outcomes, right? So once we once we define the attack surface and once we start to understand, how do we deal with everything outside of our environment, all of our cloud, all of our mobile, maybe even social media, if that's a part of what you want to protect, then of course, how do we respond to that? Like, what do we do in the event of someone establishes a fake LinkedIn account or Facebook account for our executive, or that's claiming to be customer service for our organization, and traffic is being driven to that fake account? What do we do? Do we monitor it? Do we take it down? Do we try to glean bits of information from it? Do we have our incident response team get involved? Can they get involved? Are they skilled in that area of social media and how to work with these social media companies? How do the social media companies want to be worked with? So if we're sending them a request to remove an account, is that appropriate? Are they going to listen to us, or is it going to fall on deaf ears because we didn't send the request in a way that they wanted to receive it? So there's all these different things that come into play, but understanding the workflow, understanding how the team needs to adjust to be able to take into account the expanding landscape of threats as it's been defined by the attack surface, that's a key thing to consider, because those outcomes are ultimately what you care about and what you want, but may not be achievable if you're not getting your ducks in a row for this kind of non-standard response to this changing landscape that we're experiencing. And now, of course, you used to be able to protect at a very local level, but now with the expanded attack surface, you're charged with defending at a very global scale, right? And are you positioned to be able to do that, right? Do you have a limited security team who's focused on a very limited part of the attack surface, or are you looking globally as the attack surface has now changed? So it's a key point and a key takeaway here is, how do you properly defend, when that attack is coming from all corners of the globe, right? Are you paying attention? Are you positioned correctly? Is your team thinking along those lines from a global perspective to be able to defend or not? So basically, these real life challenges, as I've defined them, are key points that we help, or actually I hear quite often from our clients as we start to help them understand kind of what their journey's like as they're moving from an older traditional sort of security model to something more advanced as it relates to a larger attack surface. So one of the ways that we're able to assist with this is, of course, just shining a light right on the entire internet. RiskIQ at the foundation, one of the main things that we are able to do is to give organizations visibility, complete visibility and constant visibility into the internet, into the wild internet. So, over a decade ago, the co-founders of RiskIQ realized that it was going to be a problem, that, this internet thing, right, as it continued to grow and get bigger and bigger, IT, traditional IT, and the way that the mindset, the way that organizations viewed their own IT and security needed to change and was going to change just based on the way that the internet was scaling. So getting visibility into the internet was a big, was going to be a big challenge. And so that's when RiskIQ was originally formed, and the co-founders said, okay, well, we need ways to shine a light into the internet, so how do we do it? And so that's when we developed this this collection mechanism to be able to reach out to the internet at scale, billions of times a day, to just pull back intelligence, pull back insight into what we found, right? And so this information, of course, actionable intelligence, to be able to understand, okay, this is what we found when we reached out. This is what this information means to us. Is it a threat to us? Is it not a threat to us? So on and so forth. And how do we weave that into the dialogue that's happening internal to the teams? And that's when RiskIQ really started to really dig into this, and we are essentially calling this our Illuminate. All the different data sets that exist on the internet, like what's the composition of the internet? What's the internet made up of? The internet is made up of websites, domains, hosts, SSL certs, JavaScript, cloud, on-premise, other security companies and technologies, WAFs and firewalls, mobile landscape, mobile stores, a wide variety of mobile stores, sanctioned official stores, unofficial stores, stores that have an APK to download, stores that have tight controls over the applications, ones that have loose controls. It's quite vast, right? If you really decompose the internet and what's out there. One of the ways that we have approached this is our goal is to index every corner of the web. And we've accomplished a large bit of that as of today. So building that graph of the internet was really the first step for us, where we said, okay, we know all of these different components exist on the web. How do we reach out and touch all of those web properties to be able to sort of weed through the noise and come up with some end result, right? So in an automated way, we were able to give that visibility so that when we are working with the client to be able to say, okay, what does our attack surface look like from the outside? Are we able to get visibility? Then we are essentially just asking our own data, what do we know about this company, right? And then we pull out information, and then from there, we're able to focus our technology on that organization to be able to give better insight and visibility into what's going on. So then as a result, we become a system of record for risk as it exists outside the firewall, giving a lot of intelligence, right, into what we have uncovered, what we found, what are the data sets that are out there, and then funneling that to the security teams that need that intelligence to be able to do their job effectively, essentially, as they start to change their mindset with, from local to more global attacks and more global vulnerabilities that exist with the changing landscape. So the overall goal, of course, is to just improve the decision-making capability, within internal teams. That way, they can take intelligence and make it actionable to their exact workflows and what they're doing, right? All originating from what was essentially just raw internet data. So another point is within Illuminate, which is one of the products that we'll be demonstrating today a little bit later on in this session. It is leveraging every bit of internet data that we can collect to be able to tell different stories, right? So as we break apart the different elements of our Illuminate offering, at the foundation, the core, we are still taking sensor data, from our global network of what we're calling virtual users, where we're reaching out, touching every web property that we can, billions of times a day, and pulling that back into the environment. That, of course, using open and closed, web sources to be able to leverage a lot of this data. Deep and dark web information is essentially married together with these data sets. Also looking at attacker infrastructure, as we've observed it. So all the APT groups, named, unnamed, that we spoke about a little bit earlier, we're essentially taking any telemetry that we can, that we've known of those groups, how they operate, the infrastructure that they use on the internet, different websites, domains, hosting providers, other TTPs, taking all that data in to be able to feed back into the Illuminate model for teams to use. That married with our own internal research. So as we start to decompose a lot of the TTPs and the groups that are behind them, then our own research team, and these are, actual humans involved, to be able to understand, a little bit more about the attackers and feeding that information out to clients to better protect themselves. And then of course, application security, being able to index, every bit of information that we're able to derive and pull back in, understanding from the company's view, what are the applications in the security stack? Like, what are the applications in the technology stack in general? And how does that apply to this intelligence that we're feeding back in? So if you are a company that uses, Fortinet, if you're a company that uses Microsoft and some of these other big applications, then how does the changing landscape and the vulnerability landscape and the TTPs that are used by attackers, how does that apply to you? So when there's another 0-day that comes out overnight, are you susceptible or vulnerable to that particular attack? So within Illuminate, we're able to show how all of that comes together, in that one view, so that you can quickly understand and ascertain, I see this issue that's come about by this attacker group that's coming from some nation state maybe. So are we at risk? How bad is it? Like what do we know? So within a moment's notice, a couple of clicks, we would be able to tell you a bit of that, right? Using threat intelligence to really understand what your environment looks like, right? How do you fare against some of the things that I've outlined? What is the attack surface as it's been defined? When it comes to these adversaries that are maybe targeting you, right? Then are you able to understand if you are within the TTPs of different groups, then can you expect to be compromised, or at least attempted to be compromised by that organization based on maybe technologies that they're targeting within your environment that to be leveraged and using, right? And then of course, taking that data and feeding it to wherever it needs to go, right? So we are a UI, a software as a service kind of an organization, but we know that our clients don't always operate that way. So getting the data to where they need to go via API is always something that we focus on, and we're helping the organizations to do. So within the Illuminate offering, essentially what we're able to provide is a unified global attack surface, right? Looking at, all these web properties, that we've observed over time, and really helped organizations to build out what that looks like, or what they look like from the outside, right? Using tailored attack surface intelligence, essentially, to assist with triage and prioritization of a lot of these risks. So once you understand kind of what the attack surface looks like, then how does it apply directly to you? Again, overlaying the adversary threat infrastructure. So if we have a reference of certain groups, then how does that information impact you directly, right? How does APT 33's actions directly impact you as an organization? And that gives you the ability to just adapt, and at a global scale, whether you're using automation tools like tips, TIMs, tips and SOARs and SIMs, or some others, then how do you get ahead of this using this actionable intelligence to sort of do the thing that your team needs to do to properly defend against these particular things? So use cases and solutions within the Illuminate offering. Essentially, we have different levels of access to get different data to different teams. So depending on who needs access to different teams, we would be essentially delivering that. So attack surface intelligence, right? So this is essentially attack surface discovery to be able to uncover threat intel as it's been mapped globally. So earlier I mentioned, we have this expansive collection capability to pull all this information back. We are able to use that to build out attack surfaces to show you, here's where all of your websites are, here's where all your domains and so on and so forth, to be able to understand, what does my attack surface even look like day one? Then we understand that there are more advanced teams out there, security operations intelligence. So taking all the data sets that we have derived from the internet, all this actionable internet data, feeding it into different automation tools, again, SIMs and SOARs, etc., for automation to be able to use our intelligence internet data to just make those applications work better, right? To better inform those applications and the teams that they're already servicing today. Cyber threat intelligence. So for the CTI teams within organizations, we know that they only care about their corner of the world, when it comes to certain aspects of security. So by being able to deliver that data to them, in addition to the attack surface, in addition to some of these other components, then it sort of broadens their view a bit to show them, hey, here's the larger attack surface. How do you apply CTI to this now? How do you leverage that internet data? Third parties, as I mentioned earlier, third parties have always been sort of the riskier element to your environment, but by being able to provide third-party intelligence, really gives you an indication as to how risky your third party is in reality, right? So with every bit of data that we're able to collect, we look at the lowest level of that data. So giving that third-party intelligence view is a really important view, because you can know at a moment's notice how risky is my third party actually. Not a hypothetical score, right? Not data that's a month old, but actionable intelligence as it sits as of this moment for my third party. We're able to map that and bring that into view. And then, of course, just vulnerability intelligence. If we're able to show not only the first party, but the third party vulnerabilities that exist, then how do you better prioritize the work that you're doing to be able to better defend? And that's ultimately where we want to put you in a position to be able to do that. The use cases that we would be able to solve right away, right? Threat investigations and response, security operations, third-party risk and intelligence, and of course, adversary fingerprinting. There is a magical moment where all of this comes together into one team's workflow or one team's view. And as a security executive maybe, or somebody who's just trying to defend the organization at a high level, this is where you're thinking anyway. All of this stuff has to come together in perfect orchestration into the magical moment of, are we defended or are we not? How bad is it? What's our posture really look like, all things considered? No walls, no dividing walls between teams, but one team who's essentially has eyes on target for all these different areas and different individual use cases. And that's the moment that we're able to assist with, right? Threat investigations and response. We talked a little bit about this already, but for organizations who are trying to defend, from the attacker and trying to understand themselves, kind of what they look like, we're able to give visibility into that, via live discovery, real attackers, and intelligence, how it overlays to you specifically. And again, we've talked about some of this already. The security operations, to understand, what's the reputation score of some of the things that we're looking at across the board, the attacks that are coming, some of the IOCs that are coming in. How do we automate as much of that as possible, with our flexible APIs and applications in some of these systems? Then we're able to bring that data in right away to be able to show some of this reputation score and deep dark web data, so that there's not so many question marks around the intelligence that's being brought in. The attacker or the third party landscape and how the attackers may be targeting third parties. We're able to quickly give you a real deal look at what their position is at any given moment, to be able to understand how risky are our third parties, or are they okay? And then, of course, with our CTI element, adversary fingerprinting. Again, something I've already mentioned, but taking the TTPs of an attacker group or a set of tools they may be using, and show how it directly impacts you as an organization. So altogether, this is the offering for Illuminate, where we're able to marry in all these different components, different what were traditionally viewed as different segments within a security team, maybe into one view, so that the team is more unified and can deliver actionable intelligence to the organization as it sits. Okay, so at this point, I'll pivot a bit and we'll go into a live demonstration for the balance of the time before we go into a bit of a Q&A. So now, this is what I've been speaking about for the past few minutes now. This is essentially the RiskIQ Illuminate offering, where we are able to, and I'll just kind of get you oriented to the screen here. But on the left-hand side of the screen, the attack surface observations, this is the first party view of what you really look like from the outside, essentially, right? Where we're able to show at a high level what's the composition of your attack surface really look like. And if I drill down into this is essentially the analyst logs in, or maybe even the senior executive logs in, and there's a small dashboard, you know, of all the most recent vulnerabilities and exploited vulnerabilities that are out there that I should care about. Where do we sit? So we offer 23 insights for a high severity that require, you know, quick attention, and then it kind of tapers off from there, right? We offer 43 insights for some medium severities and low severities. So at a glance, you know, the person who's defending the organization, when it comes to the heavy hitting, higher priority, you know, views of how are we faring, this is essentially a small dashboard to be able to look at that, right? If we were to dig into the insights a bit, you'll see that a lot of these are the recent attacks, recent issues that have come up that are pressing, need immediate attention, cannot wait, cannot be deferred, cannot be mitigated through some other mechanism. We need to address them today. So this is the first element to the first party attack surface. And then again, it tapers off as we go along. So for some of the medium risks, things such as expired domains, it is an issue. It is things that need to be addressed right away, but lesser priority in the grand scheme of things, right? So this particular view, as Illuminate has defined it for us, gives us just at a glance, how am I doing today, right? Where do we need to direct the teams to be focusing their energy? Composition of this attack surface, websites, domains, host, IP blocks, everything that's owned by the organization as we have found it publicly. This is where we're able to focus the attention, and as we've defined the attack surface here. Any new infrastructure that gets established, we're able to show you that as well. Here's the new infrastructure that we have found, and you know, for better or worse, maybe it's sanctioned, maybe it's not sanctioned, approved, unapproved, but it's new, it's linked back to you, so it's something that you should take a look at. And of all of that infrastructure that we have found in the actual attack surface, what's the breakdown of it? You know, what's the distribution of web servers that we're using for that stuff? With those web servers, what are the frameworks that we're using? If we're looking at something like an Apache Tomcat, are we using frameworks that are deprecated, that are known to be exploitable, or, you know, we should have migrated away from? So at a glance, you can understand kind of, you know, globally what's going on there, to include all of your cloud, right? So as we're looking across all the cloud providers, how much of your information, your assets, are sitting in those cloud environments, right? And then just a roll up of vulnerabilities and exposures as it relates to periods of time, you know, within your environment. So at a glance, this is a very concise, very short view of where do I sit? You know, how are we doing? What's our attack surface really look like today, like in the moment? Once you understand that, then maybe your next question would be, what about our third parties? So if we have a list of third parties that are important to you for whatever reason, maybe they're subsidiaries if you're a large multinational, maybe they are true just third parties that don't really belong to you, but you want to know how they're doing, then essentially we're able to offer that view as well. The same graphs that I showed you earlier, you would be able to understand kind of at a lower level, right? You know, for them though, how are they doing, right? If Tencent Holdings is one of our partners, and we're doing some sort of a risk evaluation to understand how risky is our partner, did we hit the mark? You know, and then, you know, do we truly know how they fare, or do we need a real deal view all the way down to the lowest level as to see how risky they truly are, right? And so that's that particular piece. If we were to try to understand a little bit more about, maybe some public research that was posted out on the web, or some research that RiskIQ created ourselves, we have a intelligence portal that outlines a lot of threat intelligence, as it's been found, as we've expanded upon it, with some of the indicators. But this is a good place to kind of get up to speed for yourself on different threat intelligence that's out there in the public domain. You'll see that there's public indicators here as it relates to this reporting, a couple of them. For enterprise users, we have a client indicator section here that are just outline RiskIQ indicators. This is essentially an area where we focus and expand upon any public research that was posted on the web. But the Threat Intel portal is essentially a library of information that allows you just to learn more about different attacks as they exist across the web, right? All right, so if we wanted to take a little bit closer look and do an actual investigation, then what we would do is, and I've kind of arranged a couple of indicators of compromise that we could look at. So if we were doing an investigation into some particular fish, right? Let's just say this was a fish. Then right off the bat, the analyst who's doing this investigation would get a certain amount of information. Really quickly, they'd get a reputation score to say, okay, this thing that you're looking at is kind of suspect, right? It has a score of 74. We show the resolutions that are coming back, the number of unique IP resolutions, any SSL certs that are associated with it. Is there any dark web chatter that talks about this IOC specifically? So this gives you a lot of information at a quick glance. If we wanted to take a closer look at it, we could dig in deeper to understand what is this thing. This brings us to a more detailed view of how long has this thing been alive. So on this screen, we'll see that this thing has only been alive for a short time period. It came online on the 6th of this month, and it's been active ever since. Anything new to the internet is always suspicious. We give you a little hint to say, hey, look, this thing is new. Maybe be a little bit cautious. Who is information? If we can collect it, we will show you, it here. Anything with a link is a pivot point to show you, hey, this is a part. There may be other infrastructure being established in this name, this organization name. Click on it to show you, hey, here's where this name exists anywhere in other parts of the web. SSL certs. SSL certs can be very telling if they're self-signed certs or maybe certs that are being reused across other attack infrastructure. Same concept, we can pivot and show anywhere across the internet all these SSL certs are being used to include common names, so on and so forth. So what we're doing here is this is essentially the motion of an analyst who is investigating maybe a potential phish or some other indicator of compromise. What are the technologies that are being used, for this thing? So there's an Apache server on the other end of this supposed phish, any other DNS data, so on and so forth. So for the investigator, the analyst who's trying to understand, using RiskIQ's portal, essentially, we're able to quickly give you a lot of information to be able to make some decision right away on what's going on with this particular indicator. So if we go back to the main screen and we'll pick something that is for the most part known to be good, right? Depending on your view of this organization, we'll kind of give you a view of sort of that same information, but maybe with more data set behind it. So this organization, the CNN.com, we show a certain number of IP resolutions, a certain number of SSL certs that are related, some hashes that are related here as well to be able to investigate on. There were some projects that were added here with some of the infrastructure as it relates here. And then the analyst can start to do more investigations into what's going on here. Let's say that the analyst wanted to understand, okay, APT33, what do we know about them? And do they intersect with any of our organizations or any of our third parties, maybe some of the infrastructure that's related to them? So at a glance, we would be able to offer that view where this particular APT33, any of the details that are that are needed to kind of get caught up to speed on that APT group, we would be able to offer that. And the TTPs that are known, we would be able to highlight that here as well. Indicators of compromise, this is where we start to see some overlap maybe between your infrastructure and their infrastructure. We would be able to show that. And then again, as it relates to other related infrastructure that you can further expand upon for that particular group, we would be able to offer that perspective here too. So all of this information, as it comes together in one platform, one view, RiskIQ is able to offer that, again, to include deep dark web chatter as it might relate to this particular group, this particular thing that we're interested in understanding a little bit more of. So that's the time that I wanted to spend with you, just to show you a little bit more about RiskIQ and about Illuminate platform as a whole. For those who are on this session or will receive the recording later, you will receive a promo code, and the promo code will give you access to sample, to trial out RiskIQ. And once you get that promo code, then you're able to log in, create your community account, your free account, plug in the promo code to the promo code section as it exists here, and that'll give you a bit more access into our platform to be able to do some pivoting and some investigating, just to learn more about RiskIQ Illuminate. That's essentially the time that I have with you. I'll pass it back to the moderator, and of course, if there's any questions, we can address them going forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Hans, for running the excellent discussion, for sharing with us some use cases, and of course, for that comprehensive demonstration on the platform. Likewise to Larry as well for introducing NetTrust as RiskIQ's authorized reselling partner. All right. So earlier in my welcome note, I mentioned that we have 2 poll questions here for you to answer. So again, the first 10 attendees to answer both questions will receive a $5 voucher from Grad Food, and the winners will be contacted via email. All right, so I will launch the first question now. All right, so as you can see on the screen, do you have a dedicated cyber threat team within your security organization? All right, so we will give you 10 seconds. All right. All right, so keep the answers coming. Okay, and we will now close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, perfect. Thank you so much for casting your votes or your polls. And for question number 2, and there you go. So would you like to request a 30-day free trial of RiskIQ Illuminate? Right, so yep, we're also asking this question because maybe our attendees here might be interested to try a free trial. I mean, try RiskIQ for 30 days, see if it can benefit their business requirements or their if it's relevant to their business needs. All right, so we're closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you so much for answering the poll questions, everyone. Appreciate your participation. And of course, please note that the winners of the voucher will be updated via email afterwards. And for those who answered yes in getting the free trial, we will personally contact you via email as well. All right, so it's now time for Q&A. Thank you for submitting your questions. And it shows that today's topic is really relevant to your roles and needs. Okay, so please note that we have vetted your questions here, and that for those who just recently joined, by the way, you may submit them, or you may submit your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll queue them if we still have adequate time. And if we don't get your questions today, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. All right, so we will now take some questions. And for the most part, I believe Hans will be answering the questions since he is our main presenter and our main and the expert for today's topic. All right, so first question reads, How does your third-party intelligence differ from risk scoring vendors? Gentlemen?
Yeah, I'll take that one. We're not a scoring company. Like RiskIQ doesn't really play in the scoring space. We are a technology forward, real like evaluation of what we found when we touched that web property as of that moment, which was, typically within a day or a couple of days. So that gets bubbled up into an actionable data set that organizations can use to really understand the true hygiene and health of that third party. So that would be the major difference.
All right, thanks Hans for answering the question. And second question here, can I see if any of the indicators that you have in your security articles are in my organization's attack surface?
Yeah, I'll take that one too. So one of the things, so yes, the short answer is yes to that one, basically, where if like I was doing an investigation into a particular IOC, or if we were looking at an APT group that had all these indicators, then we start to show you where those indicators intersect with your own attack surface. And that shows up in the actual organization view, and in the Illuminate view that has your organization or even your third parties that are there. So that when you're doing your investigation, you're trying to understand what is this infrastructure that I'm looking at. We're not only showing you what that infrastructure is, but how it intersects with you or the companies that you care about, right? So yeah, there'd be a clear line to show you, there's a bigger picture here, and it involves you directly.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you so much, Hans, again, for addressing that question. Now, moving on, here's another question here. Can RiskIQ Illuminate be integrated with our current cybersecurity solutions, such as CrowdStrike, Splunk, and Microsoft Sentinel and Defender?
Yep. So I would say we have like all the integrations that we support today. Once Illuminate was launched, we went back and readdressed each one of those to update and expand them. So yeah, for those who are concerned about, can the data come back into these other platforms? Yeah, I mean, it's something that we would work with you on. Either we've already tackled that prior to launch, or we're finalizing it with those other organizations, because integrations take time to go through since there's so many parties involved. But yeah, there wouldn't be any concern there.
All right, perfect. Thanks again, Hans. So moving on to the next question, it reads here, is there any installation required for this software, or what are the installation requirements and whatnot?
So short answer is no. Like RiskIQ, like everything that we do is purely done from the public domain, essentially, right? Where we don't install any endpoints or any agents, any servers. Like none of that has to happen within a client's environment. It's literally just public domain data collection that we do. So, earlier I mentioned the foundation of our technology is what we call a virtual user. So I'll elaborate that on a little bit more on that. But basically, when you start your day, you have a laptop, you're located in some part of the world. That laptop has an operating system. It has a browser, or maybe several browsers, and each browser has a version, maybe, right? Like version 12.2.3. We emulate that entire experience to include user behavior, like human behavior, scrolling, pausing, clicking, closing windows. We emulate that entire experience, and we crawl the web with those same experiences, right? So we do that billions of times a day, but we don't have to do any installation into your environment to be able to do what we do. It's literally just public domain data collection at scale using very covert technology to be able to do that via our crawls.
All right. Thank you again, Hans, for answering the question. Okay, so I think time check here. Maybe we can wrap up with the last question. So lastly, what parameters will it take for searching?
There's depending on the data set, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can do an actual query or search. So right now, like out of the box, we have, different IP addresses, you have domains, hashes, tracker IDs, web component names specifically. When it comes to the cyber threat intelligence, like the APT groups, right? You can do things like APT 33, FIN7, even technologies that are being used. So something like a Cobalt Strike, right? It's not necessarily an APT group, so to say, but we know that different APT groups leverage that technology, as a part of their arsenal of what they're assaulting the world with. So we give that as an actual value that can be searched and queried upon. So there's a wide variety of different different ways that you could query it, or different query values. But I would say just try out different things. We also have like a help function within the platform to show you here's some guiding principles that you can use when you're doing some of your queries, and also navigating some of the screens. Like if it says, if you're looking at the web component or the hash, or the SSL cert screen, then give it an SSL cert value, right? That's how we would do it there. But yeah, you can almost use it similar to like you would use Google, right? Even with company names in there, so sometimes that works too. So yeah, just give it a shot with different values.
Awesome. All right. So thank you again, Hans, for addressing the questions from our audience. And this concludes our Q&A session. And that's all for now. All right. So for those questions we didn't cover, don't worry. We will send it to our speakers, to Hans and Larry, so that they can get back to you in some of our content pieces or through email. All right. So I have to say, today's a wrap. Thank you again, Larry and Hans, for running the discussions. I trust that our audience can walk away with insights that you have shared with them. Right, so if you have any concerns or would like to arrange a consultation, you may visit our website, or you may contact Larry Lee, our product specialist. His details are on the screen, or you may also scan the QR code, which will direct you to our customer inquiry form. All right, so pick up your phones, scan the code, and feel free to input any inquiries that you have. All right, so to our audience, thank you again for your time and for your support in our webinars. So please note that you will receive the webinar recording to your email along with the presentation slides from earlier. So you may also find the on-demand webinar video in the NetTrust YouTube channel. So we will be uploading it soon, so stay tuned. Again, this concludes today's live event. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you all have a pleasant day ahead. Bye for now.